And now we'll get prepared for the last talk in this session. It will be Huade Huang. Huade, are you here?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you going to share slides or
Yes.
do you have a handout? Okay.
Can you see it?
Yes, can see it. And we'll just wait a moment before getting officially started.
Yep.
Give people some time to come in. I see there's still some people coming in. All right, and we are at 7:45 CST. So I'd like to introduce again our last speaker for the session, Huade Huang, who will be giving a talk on evidentiality and engagement in Kua'nsi. Thank you.
Thank you. So today, as I said, I will talk about the evidentiality and engagement in Kua'nsi. So Kua'nsi is a Central Hui language spoken in Yunnan Province, China. This is predicate structure of Kua'nsi. Verbs can be followed by aspect modality, relativity, evidential, and engagement markers. All of these markers are optional. In this talk, we will focus on the evidential and engagement marking. Here is an example of evidential and engagement markers occurring after the copula. Let's begin with the evidentiality in Kua'nsi. So Kua'nsi has these 4 types of evidentials: direct, inference, report, and uncertain memory. The first 3 evidentials are common cross-linguistically, and the last one is not a typical type of evidential you will see in the literature. Now we go through them one by one. The direct evidential in Kua'nsi encodes that the information the speaker refers to is directly witnessed or known from personal experience. It can be used to mark information obtained from different sensory, visual, auditory, smelling, and tasting. So as we have in these examples, this man is very fat as I saw. He can sing pretty well as I heard. This flower smells very fragrant as I can smell. This pear tastes very sweet as I have ate. And so this direct evidential marker also indicates that the access to information is exclusive to the speaker, not shared by the addressee. And this is a typical feature of engagement that the speaker makes an assumption about the accessibility of both speaker and addressee towards the knowledge. We will discuss this further when we talk about engagement. And continue with the evidentiality. The second evidential is inference evidential. Typologically, 2 basic types of inference can be distinguished in the evidential system of different languages: inference based on results and assumption based on reasoning. In Kua'nsi, these 2 types of inference are both marked by one evidential marker, Bode. It signals that speakers do not have direct evidence to support their statements, and those statements are inference or assumption based on their observation of the result of events or based on reasoning. Example 7 is an utterance taken from 2 speakers working out the frog story. In the frog story, there is a plot like this. The dog's head is stuck in a glass jar while they are looking for the frog. And the picture after this shows that the glass jar is not on its head. The picture indicates that somehow the dog gets rid of the glass jar. When going through the pictures, the speaker deduces that they must have broken the glass by hitting it. So he said, can you hear the sound?
Yes.
Okay.
Not really.
No, I couldn't hear it.
Maybe I just restart the sharing.
You need to, yeah, when you share, can you just click?
Yep.
Yeah. The share sound.
So let me play it again. It's okay now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah. And now we turn to the example where Buddha marks assumption based on the reasoning. When the speaker of 8 sees several people making fire in the forest, and there are some kitchen utensils around them in the video clip. Connecting these two clues together, he assumes that they are going to cook afterwards, as in example 8. The third evidential is reported evidential. Reported evidential encodes that the speakers acquire information from another's report about the event. This can also be further distinguished as reported and quotative. A reported evidential is used when the original source remains anonymous, while a quotative evidential is used when the original source is credited. In Kua'nsi, there is only one form of the reported evidential, the. It covers both reported and quotative speech. Example 10, the speaker is introducing her dog. The dog was bought by her son, and he told her it was a sheepdog. When she is introducing the dog, she uses the reported evidential to mark, to show that she gained the knowledge from another person, namely her son in this context. In example 11, the speaker is reporting what is said in the video and indicates the source of speech by using the demonstrative. The last evidential, uncertain memory evidential. So this is a special evidential. The uncertain memory evidential encodes that the speaker have directly witnessed or experienced something before, but at the moment of speech, they are not sure about that experience. It has two forms, ma&di for the non-first person subjects and sma&di for first person subjects. Note that ND is a marker of modality which encodes uncertainty as shown in example 12 here. It seems to be an apple. So for example, if person A hears person B saying something that A has heard before, A can say something like 13. This means that what B says now triggers A's memory, but by using ma&di at the end of the sentence, it indicates that A is not sure whether B really has said that before at the moment of the speech. The evidence or the experience of the speaker could be partial or complete. The experience of speaker in 13 is complete as the speaker had heard the whole speech before. The evidence can also be partial, for example, in 14. You probably have fit that big. The scenario for this example is person A saw person B carrying a pot and heading to the place where they raised the pigs before this conversation took place. Person B usually does this every day to feed the pigs. So person A assumes that person B was going to feed the pigs, but A did not see this directly. By saying 14, A is implying that although I did not directly see you doing this, I saw some behaviors which are typical part of that event. So I think you probably have done that. So that's all the evidentiality in Kua'nsi. And then now we move on to the engagement markers in Kua'nsi. Engagement is a grammaticalized category of intersubjectivity. This grammatical category encodes the relative accessibility of speaker and the addressee towards an entity or the state of affairs. As shown in the figure here, the speaker would assume whether the information is exclusive to themselves or it is shared by the addressee, and then use different engagement markers to show their assumption about the accessibility. The engagement can be explored within two parameters, the distribution of XX, whether the access to the information is symmetric or asymmetric among the interlocutors, and epistemic authority, whether the speaker or the addressee has authority to say something about the event. And these are 4 examples from Corgi to show you how engagement system looks like. In this language, the engagement markers are prefixed on the verb as underlined in the examples. These examples are talking about the event of dancing. Example 15 is appropriate to answer a question like, what are you doing, by a person who just entered and dropped into the situation. This encodes that speaker has the exclusive knowledge of the action of themselves, which is not known to the addressee. In contrast, example 16 shows that both parties are aware of the state of affairs. Thus, this is a symmetric access of knowledge. Example 17 and 18 are examples where the addressee have the epistemic authority. 17 can be used to inviting another's comments on the speaker's dancing. Apparently, the opinion of others are not shared knowledge by both parties of conversation, but it's exclusive to the addressee in this situation. So in 17, the access to the knowledge is asymmetric. For 18, the speaker is watching what the addressee is doing and comments on it, but the comment may or may not be correct. Here, both parties have access to the knowledge, the action of the addressee. So the access is symmetric. However, the addressee has the authority to say what exactly the action is. In Kua'nsi, there are two types of engagement: addressee symmetric engagement and speaker asymmetric engagement. The addressee symmetric engagement is typically used when the speaker is seeking agreement from the addressee. And the speaker asymmetric engagement has more complex function, including attention alignment and expression of self-knowledge. It cuts cross engagement and evidentiality. Anu is the marker of addressee symmetric engagement, encodes that the access towards events are shared between the speaker and the addressee. When speakers use this engagement marker, they assume that the addressee also have the access to the knowledge and seek agreement from the addressees. In example 19 here, two persons are presented with a video clip of stage events. The speaker sees that a person is tearing a piece of cloth into two pieces. So she says 19, showing that this is her thinking about events and asking for the addressee's opinion on this. As the addressee also can see the video clip, the access of knowledge is symmetric in this situation. In another video clip, we can see there are some small ball-shaped things that look like beans. The attention of both parties of the conversation is on the screen. At first, speaker A thinks there are beans and wants confirmation from speaker B because she assumes B also has access to this knowledge, as he can also see the screen. So she used Anu in 20. Speaker B responds this by saying that he has no idea what they are, as in 21. After replying to A, B comes up with his own opinion on this. He thinks those small things also look like peanuts, as in 22. Another point that these two examples indicate is that although the access of knowledge is symmetric, the interpretation of knowledge depends on the speaker's own opinion towards the knowledge, and it can vary among interlocutors. This is because the epistemic authority is on the addressee. The other type of engagement in Kua'nsi is speaker asymmetric engagement. ANE is direct evidential, as we have seen before, and it is also the speaker asymmetric engagement marker. It encodes that the speaker's personal experience or knowledge, which is not shared by the addressee. One point I want to highlight here is that not every evidential marker is also engagement marker. For example, the inference evidential does not imply whether the addressee share the same inference with the speaker. When we're considering if a marker is engagement marker or not, we should look at if the accessibility of both speaker and the addressee is accounted for. Now let's look at some examples of ANE as engagement marker. Over a phone call, it is not possible for the addressee to see what the speaker is doing, as in 23. The speaker informs the addressee of their personal knowledge, which the addressee is not able to access. Clearly, the symmetric distribution of the access is encoded by ANE here. Just use the examples we have just seen before when we talk about direct evidential to explain the engagement aspect of ANE. For example, utterance like to can be used to answer a question like, how do you find the guy you met yesterday? By using ANE at the end of a sentence, this speaker assumes that the addressee did not see the guy they are talking about. Example 3 could be part of a conversation between two people about the third person, By using ane here, the speaker also indicates that this information is not accessible to the addressee. Ane can also be used to align addressee's attention to the entity or the state of affairs that is known to the speaker but not to the addressee. In 24 here, speaker is pointing to two people in the video and talking about the height of these two people. The gesture made by the speaker indicates that the access to the state of affairs is not symmetric between the speaker and the addressee.
5 minutes remaining.
Oh, thank you. Example 25 is an utterance right after the examples we have just seen before, where the speakers are talking about the small ball-shaped things. After they have exchanged the opinion on what the small things could be with a focus on the shape of things, speaker A noticed that there are whites in the video and they might not be beans or peanuts. So A reports this to B by saying 25. Here, the speaker trying to align the attention of the addressee from the shape to the color of these small round things. Now we move on to talk about the difference between these two engagement markers in Kua'nsi. The attention of interlocutors can be coordinated on 3 different levels: entity, proposition, and meta proposition. Due to the time limit, I'm not able to expand this further. In short, they correspond to entity, state of affairs, and evidence. For Anu, the attention is coordinated to the state of affairs. It does not indicate the source of information the speaker is referring to. Neither does Anu encode through which information source the addressee obtains the information. However, the speaker asymmetric engagement marker Ane concerns the evidence to the events or entity. As shown before, the knowledge of speaker is obtained through their own personal experience or observation, which the addressee cannot see or is not aware of. This entails that the distribution of access to the information source is asymmetric between the interlocutors, which means, for example, speaker can see the event, but the addressee cannot. For Kua'nsi engagement markers, it is also found that they are not mutually exclusive. In some contexts, they can occur together. This is possibly because 2 types of engagement operate on these 2 different levels. In 27 here, 2 speakers are discussing dogs in the picture presented to them. One speaker comments on the dogs, saying that she thinks the dogs looks pretty to her and asks for the addressee's opinion. The judgment made by the speaker is personal knowledge, and it cannot become shared knowledge before speaker says it. As the picture is presented to both of them, they both have the access to the content of the picture. Here in 27, both interlocutors have symmetric access to the state of affairs, which is the content of the picture, but the speaker interprets the content of the picture in her own way. This results in these 2 types of engagement occurring together in the clause. Speaker asymmetric engagement marker marks the personal knowledge, which is the judgment made by the speaker, while addressee symmetric engagement marker marks the shared access to the state of affairs, which is the content of the picture. Conclusion. So we have seen the evidential and engagement system in Kua'nsi as 2 distinct grammatical categories for information source and intersubjectivity. And the picture Ane shows both aspects, and this makes 2 grammatical categories partially overlap in Kua'nsi. It has shown that the engagement markers operate on different levels, and this means that they are not mutually exclusive in the clauses. These markers also review the epistemic state of interlocutors in the real-time interaction. This means that these markers need to be explored in a highly interactive setting. The last point this research would like to highlight is that it might be worth exploring engagements in other Tibeto-Burman languages, as they represent many other grammatical categories related to the episteme of speakers, for example, mirativity and evidentiality. And this is the reference list I used in this presentation. And also, thanks for your attention. So if the access to the information I just presented is not symmetric, please ask a question. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Huade Huang. So we have time for some questions.
Okay, if I can just make a comment then, since nobody's jumping up for questions. When I used to come to these conferences and other conferences and hear field reports, it was often kind of depressing to hear basically people going out into the field with some textbook set of categories or else a model of English or French or Chinese or whatever, and coming back and telling us how such and such a language does, how does this language make the difference between may and might, right? And I'm just so happy to be sitting here hearing all of these papers that start out from what distinctions the languages are actually making and telling us about those, and not, twisting the data in knots in order to try and fit it into the terminology you learned in your textbooks. Okay, that's a long way of saying that was a great paper, and the one before it, that was another great paper, and we need more of these.
Yeah. Nancy, did you have a question? I actually had a question. So one of the parameters that you're discussing here is symmetry and asymmetry. So I'm wondering if there's a way in which this interacts with something like sociopragmatics. So have you noticed, or is there any evidence that given like the different demographic parameters of your speakers, there's different behaviors? So like one category of speakers prefers or tends to use one of these a lot more than others, like for politeness purposes, or even just, just social information, sociopragmatics.
Yeah, when I exercise these forms with the speakers, one male speaker did say something like a female speaker use more often like these markers than male speakers. Yeah, and then in the data I have, it's kind of like the situation like that. The male speaker did use less forms like ane to encode the engagement situation in the context, but that is just a very rough guess from the data. But I didn't set the content of which one is more occurs more with the gender or other social aspects of that. But that's just a very rough guess of that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's really cool. I really liked your talk.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? I see one in the chat. Manu's asking, can simandi have a phrasal origin? Maybe going back to a negated modal verb, ndi. I don't know if my pronunciation was appropriate there.
So I just get the slide here. Can I? Where's my chat box? Could you please I cannot see the question. Could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, it says, can simandi have a phrasal origin? So it's this first person subject form, maybe going back to a negated modal verb, ndi.
Yeah, I really not sure what about the ndi is doing there, and it's quite of complex. Like and could be the negator, but it might not be the negator, because in Kua'nsi there is a reduction of the vowels after the nasals. So, and then the syllabic nasal could be the negator or not, might be other forms. Yeah, so I'm not sure in this context. Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
I just thought that was so interesting, and I loved seeing your methodology there for collecting data. It was really nice.
Thank you.
So thank you for demonstrating that so nicely. I'll hopefully be able to incorporate some of those techniques when I have a chance.
Excuse me. Hello, Mr. Huang.
Hello.
Hello. Good. Nice. Thank you for your talk. And I just want to follow up with the question regarding the difference between genders in this the use of the evidentiality. So if you talk about the gender differentiation, does it mean if it's the same source of information, then there shouldn't be so something called the gender differentiation, because that is grammatical, right? And it must be used with a statement. So when you talk about the gender differentiation, do you mean they use one kind of marker more than the others, or the or one clarification is that are the markers you're talking about grammatical or some kind of evidentiality strategy?
Sorry, maybe that is confusion that I didn't answer that question clearly before. So by the gender, I means that the speaker report to me that these forms, like the female, tend to talk about things with more emotion. So they will have a more elaborate words to talk about the event, and then male tend to have a loose speech. So they just say the main clause and then get rid of other markers. That's the male's report to me. But in the data, I don't think there is that big difference between the male and the female speech. And then when the situation comes to like, there is really a situation like there is a asymmetric access to the information. The male did use the same markers to encode that situation. So the gender here is not like grammatical gender, but it's that the female is said to use more the occurrence of the markers in the female speech is higher than the male speech. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question.
We have time for maybe one or two more questions. I'm also guessing that most of the speakers that you worked with are around the same age. Do you happen to know if age might be another variable that would influence the usage of one of these markers?
Yeah. So I think there's no, because I have worked with 3 senior speakers and some younger speaker, and this form does do occur within all of this across the different ages. So there is no age difference. But one interesting thing might be interesting for people here is that we do see a change in the forms. Oh, maybe I do not have that slide. Oh yeah, so we don't see that there is an interchange between the imperative form and then the grammatical form. And then I don't know whether there is a difference between different age group or the gender or other social aspect in this community. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Session is about to end, so let's go ahead and give another thank you to Huade Huang for his talk on Kua'nsi. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that will be the end of this session on epistemics and evidentials. Thank you very much to all of our speakers. And this is also to be the location for the closing ceremony, which will be headed by Professor Scott Delancey. So thank you again, everyone.